KWT slaying.
Minister Teo and Minister Yakoba.
Shalom, family.
We're coming today to break down the concept of haplogroups, trying to get rid of the confusion and just breaking down the common sense about DNA and haplogroups. DNA is not that complex. It's all about data. It's all about data, people, whether it's genetic data, computer data, like in my world. It's all data. And you have people who claiming that they have medical background, but that has no support when it comes to understanding data, right? You could be a doctor and you may not know anything about genetics. Genetics is a different field dealing with data, the genetics of mankind that the Most High created us with.
So let me add this, Minister Yakoba. It's really the analysis of that data, reading that data and understanding that data, because you can have another area of DNA dealing with like health, right? You might have, a gene that causes you to be sick, right? So that's a totally different area of DNA trying to solve physical problems. But we're talking about analysis of haplogroups and whether or not that is a determinant of familial relationships.
Right. And if you do some research, you'll find that in the past, I think it was 2007, is when the scientists of the world formed a haplogroup organization that decided how to classify and how to reclassify haplogroups. So in the beginning, your haplogroup may have been something else, and now they renamed it to something else today, right? And they reclassified and rearranged it. And if you read the terminology, it's so-and-so scientist believes it's this, and then the other scientist believes it's that, but they haven't come to an agreement overall on how to interpret those changes in DNA. Right? I mean, go read it. It's interesting. And basically that's how they talk. It's all theory. It's theory, people. It's theory. And they're trying to interpret this data to have meaning. And this is why haplogroups cause so much confusion today. Okay, because it's not a clear science. Autosomal DNA, you're comparing 22 chromosomal pairs to identify who you are related to. That's all about data, family. You need enough data to identify who's who. And haplogroup is what? Identifying one single mutation on one single pair, which is a sex chromosomal pair. One single pair, identifying a mutation on that one pair and trying to say that means something as far as who you're related to. And you're going to see in our presentation why that just does not work. So here's our introduction. Teo does not claim to be DNA scientists. We are software developers with years of programming experience. We have dealt with many types of data sets. Interpreting DNA data is like interpreting any corporate big data with business rules. According to the National Human Genome Research Institute, DNA is read like a code. So, who is better to interpret data, but those who work with data every day, not medical people. If someone is in the medical field, that does not make them the de facto experts on DNA interpretation. We deal with object-oriented programming within our profession, which deals with inheritance and hierarchical relationships. This is what DNA is. This is what we do every day in our field, just translated into zeros and ones. Teo does not believe in dealing with endless genealogies. We also do not believe that DNA is the way to interpret who is and who is not Israel. We believe that Deuteronomy 28:46 curses is the way to determine who Israel is. So basically, family, if you live in the curses, you Israel, because we live in it, and we the only people live in it. And even those of us who are living better than others are living this thing. We are hated for no reason, and we are told that every day. So the reason we are discussing this is because many people are trying to use haplogroups to determine who Israel is and who is not. Because of our experience interpreting all forms of data, we believe that haplogroups used for identifying relationships are completely wrong and are probably fraudulent. So family tree DNA, what is a haplogroup? Every male individual who takes one of our Y DNA tests will also receive their Y DNA haplogroup. When humans left Africa tens of thousands of years ago, they departed in small groups that migrated into different parts of the world. Over many generations, each group developed distinct mutations, allowing us to identify one from the other. We call these groups of mutations haplogroups, and they can tell us which migratory routes our paternal ancestors traveled. So one thing they told you here is that it deals with migration, right, of these people. And what else does it tell you? It tells you that these people, all of them, originated in Africa. So let's get this clear, family. When people are telling you, oh, you got an R1 or you got a G2A and you're a European, no, the Europeans originated from these people who were in Africa. It is this DNA over 26,000 or more years that they're looking at. Okay? So that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with old, ancient DNA that mutated thousands of years ago.
And one thing I want to add to that, this is Minister Yacoba. Many scientists say that when you're dealing with a haplogroup, even though there may be what they call a snap gene, which is nothing more than a mutation, right? That it is not included in their grouping unless it's been around for thousands of years. So let's say today you have a mutation in your gene. Based upon their classification, you should have your own haplogroup. But unless that mutation has been around thousands of years, they will not include that within the haplogroup. So therefore, a lot of you will default to that high level haplogroup. So, it's not a true classification because everyone has a mutation. Okay.
Right. That's a good point, right? Because your grandfather may have had a mutation. That's how recent a mutation could have occurred. But because it's not tracked for thousands of years, they don't count it. So they look at whatever your grandfather had that matches the ones that they have on data on file. That's the one they go by. So if it's not thousands of years old and grandpa had a mutation, they just ignore it because it's not old enough. So major clades or clades. Okay, I'm gonna say clades, major clades. So basically, family, okay, we're talking about the major haplogroup alphabets. Okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, K, N, O, P, Q, and R. Okay, these are major high-level clades, and A being the original haplogroup. And so if you believe in the scriptures, then A represents A00 represents the biblical Adam, if you believe in the scriptures, right? Otherwise, it believes in the first man. However he got here, climbing out the soup of life, like them evolutionists like to say. I'm just joking with that because that's silliness. But anyway, I mean, you got some people that believe that nonsense. So however you want to interpret that, it's still Alpha Adam, right? Whether it's a biblical Adam or an evolutionary Adam. We're talking about A00. And so from my perspective, that's Adam. Okay, so everyone else is really a subclade. Okay, even B, C, D, E, F, G, they're subclades of A, because A is the original haplogroup. But when it comes to science, they at a high level, as far as what they have found in the earth, they're identifying these listed here as major clades. Okay, so let's look at haplogroup E. So E is a major clade. Now, as these scientists decide how they want to break up these mutations, right? At some point, the scientists say, okay, I think there's enough mutations here to give it its own reclassification. Okay, so like in this case, you have E, which is the major clade. E1 is a subclade of E. E1A is a subclass of E1. E1B is a subclade of E1. E1B1 is a subclade of E1. Okay, you see, family? So so E1B1A is a subclade of E1B1. So here's the important thing to take note, family. This is a shocker, okay, for a lot of you people who misinterpret DNA. But based on this right here, E1B1A is at the same level of E1B1B. They're related, and they are related to the subclade of E1B1. All of them related to E. So anyone who's E1B1A is also related to E1B1B. What does that mean? And if you look at it, it says formerly E3. So at one time, the so-called scientific community relabeled E1B1 as E3 and said, no, we want to keep it up as part of the E1 clade and make it a subclade of E1. So now what you're looking at here, family, is that E1B1A and E1B1B are at the same level of E1B1. So they're related. Okay, and if you listen to those teachers out there, they say E1B1A is Hebrew genes, Hebrew genetics. But E1B1B is not. But both of those are subclades of E, which means they came from the same forefather. Not only that, they came from E1B1. So that's how close B is to A. So E1B1A is extremely close to E1B1B. E1B1B is a subclade of E1B1. So it's a minor mutation. Okay, A was the first identified mutation, and then B was another slight variance of E1B1. So in reality, E1B1A and E1B1B are so close that it's almost minuscule in its mutation. So they are the same family, but if you listen to what they teach out there, what do they tell you? They say E1B1B is Hamites. And they say E1B1A is Israel. But they're from the same father. So the most logical conclusion would be that anyone who's E1B1A and E1B1B are Hamites. The right conclusion would be that E1B1, both of those they're descendants of E1B1. They have the same forefather. So E1B1A and E1B1B have the same forefather. They have the same mutation. They're related. They got to have the same forefather. If you go by their teaching. Anything to say about that, Minister Yakoba?
No, you said it well.
Okay, let's continue. So a subclade is a subgroup of a haplogroup. So as I broke it down for you, family, E1B1A and E1B1B are really minor mutations of E1B1. Boom. You can't teach that, brother, unless you're going to say that the Hamites and the Israelites are the same people with a minor mutation from E1B1.
So I want to add to that, this Minister Yakoba, that biblically speaking, family, when Israel left Egypt, they left with Mizraim, and which are Hamites, and they intermingle with that mixed multitude. So you're going to have some Hamite blood, of course, in Israel. Just want to clear that up.
Right. And if you don't understand that, go back to blackhistoryinthebible.com, Minister Dante Forson's site, and you'll see the history of who married who. Okay. You'll see that the Hebrew Israelites married mostly descendants of Ham. Right. They may say Canaanites, but Canaan is a descendant of Ham. They may say a child of Mizraim, but Mizraim is a son of Ham. Okay. They may say Cush, but Cush is a son of Ham. And all throughout the Bible, that's who our people were marrying. So how you an Israelite and you marrying Hamites? Because that's our origin, family. That's our origin. Don't listen to these people teaching you all this hate stuff about Ham and all that. And I mean, that's our origin. I mean, the matriarchs in the beginning, many of them were of Ham. So all of haplogroup E is black. Different types of black, but still black nonetheless. If a white person or an Arab person carries any branch of haplogroup E, it just means that they have African male ancestors. It doesn't mean that branch turned non-black, unless it's a first generation albino is the only exception. So here's the problem, family. Okay, you got white people that have E1B1B all over Europe. It's all over Europe. E1B1B is all over Europe, and they can't explain it. Okay, and so, but the issue is, like I read to you from the very beginning of this presentation, right? From the very beginning, is that the origin of the haplogroups were in Africa, and that those people migrated out. Okay, so that's what we're seeing here. So every last major haplogroup originated in Africa. So when people up here telling you Aura is the white man, and then you go and look at in the Congo and see an Aura1, it's because the Aura1 originated in Africa. The G originated in Africa. They all originated in Africa. It's just that many of the descendants of this ancient ancestor are found, his genes are found being spread in Europe. Okay, and it's, as the Lord said, be fruitful and multiply, and you know men don't have a problem with that. Okay, Eurocentrists like to make the baseless claim that EM215, which is E1B1B, is a white haplogroup because they claim they found some whites and Arabs who belong to branches of EM215, even though the majority of EM215 branches are found among most so-called Horn Africans and North Africans, but these people are not white. We may have long noses and long faces, still doesn't make us white or so-called Caucasian, an all-exclusive version of white. If you look up the haplogroup E1B1A project at FTDNA, you will find many non-black people belong to the many branches of E1B1A. E1B1A is considered a so-called sub-Saharan haplogroup by racist Eurocentrists, even though it's found in Europe and West Asia, just like its little brother E1B1B. He just told you E1B1A is in Europe, also in the white people. Okay? So according to Eurocentrists, E1B1B is found in 25% in Europe, mostly in South Europe, across the Great Sea from Africa. They say EV13 is the highest branch of E in Europe, and it's mostly found in Albania, then the Balkans. So you see even E1B1B and E1B1A, you find them in the genes of people in Europe, okay? Because all of the major clades began in Europe. Began in Africa. Okay? These are the ancient forefathers. There were no white people except for 4,000 years ago. Prior to that, everyone was dark-skinned. Every culture, every biblical character was dark-skinned. Okay? And that's where these genes begin. So you're not going to identify what family you're of by trying to look at haplogroups. You truly, family, have to look at autosomal. It is the only way. Minister Yacoba?
Yeah, family. So no matter how you look at it, people try to manipulate data for their own worldview. Okay, so you have to be careful just because somebody says something or the way they say it, right? Sometimes, like for instance, they're going to say, E1B1A is Europeans or E1B1B is Europeans. But what does that mean? Because we know at one time, the Moors, was all over Europe, right? I mean, black folks was all over Europe. So when they say that, you have to go deeper. You can't just take it on a high level that they're talking about white folks, okay?
Right. The reality is that everyone carries genes from the ancient forefathers of Africa. Okay, that's what we're seeing with this DNA, and that's what this. Here's the thing. Okay, as this article was saying, the racist Eurocentrists. Hold on. The racist Eurocentrists are trying to create the idea that there is truly such a thing as race, and that they can use genetics to separate the blacks from the whites and create this racist idea of supremacy. Okay, so this is why they began to do these studies and come up with the idea of haplogroups, was to try to identify and separate out the people of the world by haplogroup. And you can't do that. You want to find out who your family is, you got to do autosomal. You have to look at autosomal. So family, just because people shoving this haplogroup down your throat don't mean nothing. Let that go. They're lying to you. Okay, so here we have here the typical ethnic distribution of a DNA haplogroup can be absolutely meaningless in some cases. As Joseph Boyle and Andreas West have pointed out in other answers, autosomal DNA is far more informative in terms of a person's collective ancestry. An apt example of this is the case of the Rivas family of Yorkshire, England, including John Rivas above. 7 men from the family with apparently a common ancestor in the 18th century belong to haplogroup A1. Okay, everyone know A1. The A haplogroup belongs in Africa. Okay, which is rare worldwide, but is otherwise restricted to Africa or members of African diasporas in the Americas, Europe, etc. A1A is most commonly found among men from Guinea-Bissau in West Africa, especially speakers of Mankanya language. The revisers have no knowledge of any African descent and are phenotypically The revised have no knowledge of any African descent and are phenotypically European. It seems clear, however, that they are descended from a man of African descent who arrived in Britain many centuries ago. Okay, so the bottom line is that everyone is descendants of dark-skinned people. That's the issue here, and they all came out of Africa. And so the racist Eurocentrists have come up with haplogroup. At least they're abusing the teachings of haplogroup and teaching it incorrectly. And that's what you see today from a lot of these brothers in the Hebrew community, trying to teach you that E1B1A is the way to identify Hebrew Israelites. It's a lie. Okay, and this is why you have to go by the curses, because the scripture says the curses will follow you forever as a sign of who you are. And we lived it. We lived the curses. We're affected by them, right? Or we have been. Hopefully after this year we won't be. So Levite DNA. Okay, this is a site, and this is a statement by a scientist. He said, why don't geneticists use haplogroups in their findings? We believe that it is because haplogroups have serious flaws in its application. So
I wanna step in there right quick. So the statement was, the problem is also in that geneticists rarely consider haplogroups in their findings. Okay, so geneticists don't use haplogroups when they're looking at DNA. Okay, and so why don't geneticists use haplogroups in their findings? We believe that is because haplogroups have serious flaws in its application. Okay, that's tail. Okay, so we believe that haplogroups is flawed. And as you can see that by the previous example given with E1B1A and E1B1B, that the allocation of haplogroups to define relationships is flawed. It don't work. I mean, there are people who are Afrikaners with E1B1A. Okay, how do you get white Afrikaners with E1B1A? Because remember, these samples are taken back supposedly thousands of years. So that means it goes back to one of the oldest African people, as Minister Taylor said. Go ahead, Mr. Taylor.
So unless you want to say that Afrikaners are Hebrew Israelites, then obviously this is a problem, right? It's flawed. Afrikaners with E1B1A. You're going to tell me they're Hebrew Israelites? The same people that enslaved the true Hebrew Israelites in Africa? Come on now. African Americans. According to the founder of African Ancestry, most black men in America, aka Israelites, have a percentage of white DNA because of the many rapes during slavery. She stated that when they test black males to identify the tribes that they are in, they do so through the maternal line of the mother. Some want to say that our haplogroup G makes us white men. Well, those who say that, I would like to see their haplogroup. Oh yes, please show us your haplogroup. Put it out there, please. Log into Ancestry or whatever DNA company you use and show us your DNA. We showed ours already. Okay, and most of it was Cameroon, Ghana, a large percentage of Nigeria, Benin, Togo. That's our autosomal. If you live in America, I am sure you have white ancestry. However, as stated in the introduction, we believe that not only is there problems in using haplogroups to identify familial relationships, but we believe that there is direct fraud going on as well. And as stated by that previous article, it's a lie that's created by so-called racist Eurocentrists. Where did Haplogroup G originate? Haplogroup G originated some 48,000 years ago, and its most recent common ancestor likely lived 26,000 years ago in the Middle East. It spread to Europe with the Neolithic Revolution. Okay, so it began where, family? In the Middle East. Where's that? Home. The G haplogroup. According to researchers, the G haplogroup is found in the Levant and other locations. Nowadays, haplogroup G is found all the way from Western Europe and Northwest Africa to Central Asia, India, and East Africa. Although everywhere at low frequencies, generally between 1 and 10% of the population. The only exceptions are the Caucasus region, central and southern Italy, and Sardinia, where frequencies typically range from 15 to 30% of male lineages. And guess what? That's an area that was dominated by the Moors, who were accompanied by Hebrew Israelites, right, when they were in Europe. as we taught in previous shows.
And that's the thing, family. You remember what you've been taught, right? Remember the historical lessons as well of these territories, right? And what we specifically know about these locations, right? And ask yourself, why are they saying, okay, G is mostly white folks? How can that be? It's the Middle East we're talking about here. Somebody's lying.
Right. So we know white people didn't live in the Middle East, right? We understand that. They couldn't survive, just like white baby Jesus couldn't live among the Egyptians. Okay. So the Levant. So the area called the Levant is what we call the Middle East. Now, supposedly, this area going back 60,000 years had white people in it. They do not talk about finding E1B1A of the E1B1B in this area in high concentrations, but we know that they should be there in high numbers. We will discuss this in more detail as we go. So here's a map of where they show where G is. And that big dark red spot, maroon spot, 60 to 100% of it was G directly in the Levant. And as we read to you, G originated where? In the Middle East, right? Lands given to Israel. White men and white Jews. According to some articles, Haplogroup G is found among Caucasian, Iranians, Turks, Jews, etc. If haplogroups identify familiar relationships, we have a few questions to ask. And let your E1B1A scholars please answer these. Why are there people of different ethnic groups? Why don't these people have the same blood type, right? Why are most white people R1B? Why doesn't my haplogroup match my autosomal that points to Congo, Nigeria, Angola, Togo, etc.? Okay, so like we told you guys, we are G2A4. Okay, we showed you it originated in the Middle East. Our autosomal points us to the Congo, Nigeria, Angola, Togo. Okay, and Ghana. Now, how is it G doesn't point there then? If how they interpret haplogroup is true, right? That racist interpretation, then our haplogroup should match our autosomal results. They're nowhere the same according to how they interpret the data. So something's wrong. There's obviously something wrong with how haplogroups are being used to determine groups of ethnic people. Surely, the more accurate autosomal results should somehow reflect the haplogroup results, but they don't, at least according to how the Gentile scientists have been presenting haplogroups. And unfortunately, a lot of our Hebrew Israelite teachers out there have consumed this bad teaching, not understanding that their autosomal should be supported by their haplogroup results according to this bad teaching about haplogroups in general. Second major, migration. Let's use deductive reasoning here.
So, Minister Taylor, let me read the left side first on origin.
Sure.
Origins. Haplogroup G descends from macro haplogroup F, which is thought to represent the second major migration of Homo sapiens out of Africa at least 60,000 years ago. While the earlier migration of haplogroup C and D had followed the coast of South Asia as far as Oceania, and the Far East haplogroup F penetrated through the Arabian Peninsula and settled in the Middle East, its main branch, micro haplogroup IJK, would become the ancestor of 80% of modern Eurasian people. Okay, listen to that. Haplogroup formed approximately 50,000 years ago as a side lineage of haplogroup IJK, but seems to have had a slow start evolving in isolation for tens of thousands of years, possibly in the Near East, cut off from the wave of colonization of Eurasia. Think about what they're saying here. As of late 2016, there were 303 SNPs defining haplogroup G. SNP is nothing but a mutation family, confirming that this paternal lineage experienced a severe bottleneck before splitting into haplogroup G1, G2, G1, might have originated around modern Iran at the start of the last glacial maximum, some 26,000 years ago. G2 would have developed around the same time in West Asia. At that time, humans would all have been hunter-gatherers, and in most cases living in small nomadic or semi-nomadic tribes. Members of haplogroup G2 appear to have been closely linked to the development of early agriculture in the Fertile Crescent part, starting 11,500 years before present. The G2A branch expanded to Anatolia, the Caucasus, Europe, while G2B diffused from Iran across the Fertile Crescent and east to Pakistan. It is now found mostly among Lebanese and Jewish people, but also at low frequencies in the Arabian Peninsula, Syria, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan. So think of this, family. They stated 60,000 years ago, the second migration occurred out of Africa. Okay? The haplogroup descends from F, which descended out of Africa, and they went into the Middle East. And then they went to these other places. And who just so happens to have G? Syrians, Iraqis, Iranian, Afghanistan, Jews, etc. Now, I can say Jews, your first thought is that it's going to be white Jews. Just like in Europe back in the day, right? When you would read the books and they talked about the Jews being persecuted in Europe, many people thought they were white Jews until you did your research and found out they were African black Jews. Okay, so use your reasoning. 60,000 years ago, a bunch of white folks went into the Middle East. Yeah, right. Okay, I mean, it don't make no sense. So I'm going to read the right side. So let's use deductive reasoning here. If G descends from F, which represents the second major migration out of Africa, then we should expect a large majority to be black, right? If they migrated out of a black continent, then they should be black, not white. How in the world are you going to give all these white folks G? See, what's happening is G probably represents, and we're not saying that G is good for representing relationships, but G probably represents a migration of Shemites. Because who was part of the second migration? Let's use the Bible for a second, because one of the other slides is going to say it, and we're going to go through it again. But the first migration would have been who? Canaan. Because Canaan was the first one to go into the Canaan land, right? Second migration would have been Shemites. Israel came and took the land back that was promised to them, right? So G probably represents the descendants of Shem, which is Israel, which is why they're trying to associate it with Jews, but they want you to think it's white Jews. So they want us to believe that a large group of white people migrated out of Africa to the Levant. Could it be that a large group of Shemites migrated out of Africa to the Levant and they are black? Minister Taylor.
Biblical view. If we look at what the Bible states in the book of Jubilees, the first people to go into Canaan, aka the Levant, were the Canaanites. We can see on older maps that Ham's descendants were around what we call the Middle East. Egypt was Mizraim, and the other Hamites in what was called Nubia in Upper Egypt. Therefore, the first major migration out of Africa would have been Ham's descendants. The second major migration out of Africa would have been Shem's descendants, since they took over the promised land from the Canaanites. Therefore, they want to make G a white haplogroup and apply it to white people and Jews. None of this makes sense the way they tell it. Okay, so as we explained, we have these racist Eurocentrists who built this argument in order to identify the concept, to legitimize the concept, what they call race, and therefore, build the argument of who's the chosen people or not. And so out of people's ignorance, not knowing who the true Jews are, they can say it belongs to Jews, but in reality, it's the black Jews, right? The same ones who occupied Spain and Portugal before they were kicked out and sent to Africa. Standard operating procedure. If you have watched our videos about African Israelites being the ones persecuted in Europe during the Spanish Inquisition and being sent to Sao Tome and Africa and enslaved on the sugar plantations, you would notice something weird in the more modern books about this history. You would notice that they give the impression in modern books that the Jews persecuted in Europe were the white Ashkenazi Jews. We have proven through the older European books that this is not the case. It was truly the black or Negro Jews who were persecuted. This is what they are doing in the discussions about the G haplogroup. They use the fact that Jews have the G haplogroup and that this group is found in Europe, Caucasus, and Middle East to give the impression that they are white people when in fact it is the black people. This is standard operating procedure for them. Sometimes it is not the information but how it is interpreted. Why are we discussing the G haplogroup? Some may think that we are trying to prove that we are Israel, but that we are really descendants of white people. Personally, it does not matter who we are so long as we are in Christ. And you guys know that. We've said this day one. However, we decided to discuss G to illustrate the point that there are problems with how haplogroups are being used to identify a group of people. Serious major problems. Just for those who do not think we are Negro Israelites. Our family is from Mississippi. We have direct links to former slaves. Our people are as African looking as you can get, although we are what you would term red like King David. Why is my haplogroup different from a family member's? For relatives not on your direct maternal or paternal line, you are not likely to share a haplogroup. The 23andMe DNA relatives feature does not use your haplogroup to find matches, and not all people who share a haplogroup are listed as genetic relatives. Most of your genetic relatives will actually fall outside of your haplogroup because your haplogroup only tells you about direct paternal line or maternal line ancestors. Typically, the DNA mutations that define a haplogroup occurred thousands of years ago, so many pairs of people who share a haplogroup are not closely related. That is from 23andMe. Conclusion. Looking at E1B1A or the G haplogroups to determine who you belong to is flawed. This is why many geneticists stay away from haplogroups and are concerned about autosomal testing. What do you think is more accurate, comparing one chromosomal pair or comparing 22 chromosomal pairs to determine relationships? 22 is definitely better than 1. Being software developers, we know how what scientists believed one day to be fact is tomorrow proven wrong. We must not only look at the interpretation of data that they give us, but we must apply that interpreted data to what we see. You have some white people who are E1B1A and E1B1B, but they look nothing like us. You have Ramses, Pharaoh of Egypt with E1B1A, as well as many Israelites. What does that mean? And I've been told by some of these camp teachers that Ramses being E1B1A means he was a Hebrew. And the Bible tells you Ramses was an Egyptian who persecuted the Hebrews. Who are you going to believe, the Bible, or are you going to believe these guys? Conclusion continued. We believe that haplogroups is probably better used to try and determine migration patterns of a certain group with certain SMP mutations. It cannot be used to determine familial relationships. If it could, then our autosomal test should match our haplogroup. Some of the simple people will not think about what we are saying here. They will just say things like, but G is white people and E1B1A is Israel after the issues we just showed you. The interpretations of the data is not consistent when dealing with haplogroups within the scientific community. Teo is about pursuing truth, no matter where it may lead. We hate liars, we do. Therefore, many do not like what we do, because we want our people to walk in truth and not error. Validate. Israel has been scattered among the entire world as slaves and has mixed with several cultures. Do not think that Israel could possibly have one distinct haplogroup. The Most High knew that Israel would not only speak multiple languages, worship various gods, and mix with various people groups. However, he promised to bring them all back and make them one nation again under his authority. Do not listen to people because they tell you they have this and that credentials. People do lie. Do not listen to us either without doing your own research. You may come up with a different interpretation. Know that we at Teo do not assume that you cannot understand these things. Like with anything, if you have an interest, you can understand many things. We do not assume things are legit just because someone says so. We even had to validate for ourselves that Autosomal was accurate, and we did validate that it is valid. So if you like what we do, please support us at patreon.com/TEOTW. Minister Teo, before we go, do you have anything else to say?
Well, family, I just want to say that, we try to do our best to help you understand things. It boggles my mind how some people just follow people, and how people say things like there's a street sign, and because there's a street sign, this means X, and people believe that stuff. So I have the saying that because you sort of get overwhelmed by some of the craziness you hear. We can't save anybody. We can't. Only God can save. All we can do is make sure, we're being used of him and that our heart is correct towards him, and to try to make sure we do the best we can without bias. So family, we love you, pray, seek the Most High, and don't believe everything you see.
Peace and blessing, Israel. Your captivity is ending.